I'm at 4, which is trusting teller and tale. And there's a relationship of trust and suspicion, and of gaming and strategy in these stories, where after you've been reading for a while, you're like, oh, okay, I'm a little less trusting than I was when I first started off on page 1. By the time you get to page 80, especially, and you've come through this section, you're like, okay, I was taking it as straight up, but now maybe not so much. O'Brien has already told us, for instance, that Rat Kiley is an untrustworthy narrator. That doesn't mean he's not worth listening to, right? And that's sort of the point. It's like we're kind of at the mercy of the storyteller who has been there. Whether or not we completely believe them, presumably there are enough elements of what they're telling us that it's like, yeah, it's worth listening to this thing, right? So Saunders says the next part, you won't believe. Probably not, I said. You won't. And you know why? And he gave me a long, tired smile. Because it happened. Because every word is absolutely dead on true. And he made a sound in his throat like a sigh, as if to say he didn't care if I believed him or not. But he did care. He wanted me to feel the truth on page 70. And this is how the lie begins to replace the truth. Because to get the effect of the truth, you have to heat up the narrative. And as you begin to heat it up, you begin to tell a lie, basically. So you're aiming at what the teller, you want to get what you, the teller, feel across to the audience, whoever the audience may be. The idea for me is to recreate my experience in you, the listener, for my emotions to be transmitted to you with as much verity or acuity as possible. And if telling lies is going to do the job, well, I may just decide that it's worth it if I want you to really understand what's going on. But what about when I want to confirm the story is an actual truth? That is, it's a happening truth. To what extent then we have to ask, are our stories ever unmediated? So on page 101, they go through this, where they actually have a discussion about telling stories, right? Which is why this is so important, because they understand the importance of stories. Whenever he told the story, Rad had a tendency to stop now and then, interrupting the flow, inserting little clarifications or bits of analysis and personal opinion. It was a bad habit, Mitchell Saunders said, because all that matters is the raw material, the stuff itself, and you can't clutter it up with your own half-baked commentary. That just breaks the spell. It destroys the magic. You have to do what you have to do. What you have to do, Saunders said, is trust your own story. Get the hell out of the way and let it tell itself on 101. And so here again is the word trust, right? That you've got to trust the narrator. You've got to trust the story. You got to have, even if the narrator is effectively a good liar, is an effective liar, basically, about the thing, as long as it makes you feel, oh yeah, this is the reality. Which is what a lot of people felt, say, when they saw Schindler's List, right? Despite the fact that we knew there were all kinds of things that were fake about Schindler's List. We were like, that's no, this, no on that, no, this didn't happen, no, but people were like, but this is what it really felt like, and there were survivors who said that's what living in the ghetto felt like. It's like, well, how can you, what are you going to do about that? Well, you have to honor that. You have to say, okay, this is a version of what this felt like. It doesn't mean we're denying the Holocaust. It means we're saying that this story is, for many people, very accurate. Okay. Is it accurate for everybody? Not necessarily. Does it mean that the Holocaust didn't happen? Not at all. Of course it happened. Yes, absolutely. So it's this word trust that we have to focus on. And as before, it's Saunders who has the greatest sense of hurt about being betrayed by narrative conventions, which O'Brien is, sort of tossed them. He's like, yeah, it's not going to work. Mitchell Saunders stared at him. You can't do that. Do what? Jesus Christ, it's against the rules, Saunders said. It's against human nature, this elaborate, you can't just say it's elaborate story. Hey, by the way, I don't know the ending. I mean, you've got certain obligations on 107. And so we all know this experience of, being told, say, a joke, having somebody go through a long, built-up joke, and they're like, oh, I forgot the punchline. You're like, what? You can't forget the punchline? Why did you start telling this? No. You betrayed me.